Now I'm going to show you how to make one coil of wire from several different pieces of wire. So I'm trying to get as much free coil as I can. So I take these car electric motors and I unwind, and this had 18 different sections of wire. So I want to turn these four loops into one nice coil. And this is what I've made here. So what you have is you have a couple of extra connections that you need to solder. There's 3 extra connections, and so the coil starts here, goes around, and then this is the first coil that you put together, the second, the third, and then the fourth comes out there. So I'm putting them together in series. So I'm going to wind it so that I can have 4 coils that come together as one. These coils I also got out of an electric motor, but they were longer. This one only has 2 coils together, and this is just 1 coil. So there's only 1 in and 1 out connection. This can really help you make electric generators that you want out of free materials, and you need to work with what you have. So depending on how long these coils are, you have to work it together to build the coils you need out of the garbage coils that you get out of the motors. The first thing you do is you take all 4 coils and you wrap them so that you have the start of the coil and the end of each piece of wire exposed. And then you have to take all the connections, the beginning and the end of each coil, and you have to take off the insulating material. So I'm using 80 grit sandpaper. So just grab the coil. You have to do this several times. You probably want maybe an inch where you remove, and you keep doing it until you see the bare copper. Alright, so that's how it should look like. You have like a yellow wire there. You can see how at the bottom, by my finger here, this is where there's the insulation, that color, and here this is the bare copper. There's still some pieces that have it, but that's okay. We're going to solder it afterwards, or we can clean it up a little more. So you want to do this for all the connections for each coil. When you cleaned all the ends of the coils, now you're ready to start winding. I built this winder. There's 2 bolts. There's a plate here which has a shape, so this is the center shape of the hole in the coil. And then it has the right thickness for how thick I want my stator to be, is 1/4 inch, so I use 1/4 inch plywood. So you take your first coil and then you unravel it. What I like doing is to straighten the whole coil out to prevent it from twisting. So I just keep straightening it out. Straightening the whole coil out. This is only a 7-foot coil. Make sure that there's no kinks. And then usually what I like doing is hanging it down and letting it spin so as you wind it. So I hang it on the floor here beside my desk, and then I put the start through the start hole, and on the back I fold it around so that I have enough to wire it later. So this is going to be the very start of the coil. Now I hold this down and I start winding. Now you really want to keep a lot of tension as you're winding. So I'm pulling very hard and letting it slip through my fingers. I'm really trying to hold on to it. You want to make sure that you don't get up on the edge like this. You want to make sure it's always in there, and you want to make sure it winds nice between the 2 gaps. Now whenever you want to stop and you need both hands, what I do is I lift it up, I put it here, I keep tension on it, and I just use a clothes hanger clip, clothespin, and I make sure that, so at no time do you want to release the pressure. This end, the finished part, is free. There's no coil on top of it. It'll just start unraveling, so you'll have a problem. So you want to wind until you get to the end of this coil. When you get to the end, you just take the clothespin to secure it, and you want about that much extra. So this is going to have to connect now to the next piece of coil to make it a continuous coil. So you're going to have to solder these ends. These are 20 gauge wire. I just twist them together and solder them. I like to solder it outside of the coil so I can do repairs. If I was going to put this in resin, all the different coils, I would have all the connections outside, so if there was a problem I could cut it and resolder it and check the connection. Take your next coil of wire, and again you just straighten it out. Now the next coil, so this is the start of the first coil and this is the end of the first coil. The next coil, I like starting it here in this finish hole because this will hold it as I wind it. It has to be nice and strong, and you want it to be the same length so that when you pull it out it can attach here. So I usually leave just about the same length, something like this would be good. I pull it down and then I push on it, I flip it over, and then I start winding the next coil. Just the same as I wound the first one, lots of tension, going around in circles. So when you're done winding and you just have a little bit of wire left, so this is the end of the second coil, you take it again, and exact same thing, you secure it with a clothespin. Okay, and now you don't have to hold this down anymore because you're not winding this part. You can push through the beginning of the second coil. See, I like this system because you just deal with one coil at a time and its joint. If I wind all of them together, I have to mark each wire to make sure I'm connecting the right coils together. So now these two can be twisted together. So this is connecting the first coil, the end of the first coil with the beginning of the second coil. So they're connected in series. I take this and then I can put another clothespin on here. It's good to have lots of these strong clothespins or something else to clamp it in position. Okay? So now I'm free to take the next coil and to start at the finish again. And I'll connect the beginning of this coil that I put in the finish with the end of the second coil. This is the third coil. And you can keep doing that. You can have as many coils as you want. It just gets kind of busy here with all the different connections. So I'm going to use a total of 4. Alright, so now I'm finished coiling. So the beginning, this is the start of the coil. It goes around, and then here's the connection between the first part and the second coil. It goes around, this is between the second and the third. This is between the third and the fourth. And then this wire here is the end of the coil. So right now it's really important to check the resistance to make sure that the connection is good. This is even before soldering. I think this is about 20-25 feet of 20 gauge wire, and it looks like the resistance is about 1 ohm. So I'm going to solder the joints here. Right now they're just twisted together. So once I solder this, the connection will be a lot better. Now it's freaking out because it lost the connection. But if I go over here on the insulation at the end of the coil, I have nothing. So it has to be stripped. Right here, this is where I sand it off. It goes down to 1. So it's good to check this just to make sure that you wound it properly. You might connect like the first coil to the last coil and skip the coil by accident. So it's really good to go through and make sure that it goes the first, second, third, and fourth coil, that you're going through all coils, nothing's connect in parallel, it's all in series. We have our final coil. This is the size I want. This is going to fit together when I put my 9 coils together for a 7-inch diameter stator. So the next step, a lot of people put glue on the coils. I might want to rewire this. I'm still in the testing phase, so I still want to use this wire if I want to change the design. I don't want anything permanent, so all I'm going to use is good old duct tape to put it together. But once you take this plate off, it all wants to uncoil. So I like doing the first piece of duct tape when it's all together, and that's why I have this slot and this slot cut out. So what I use is I took the bottom of this Arizona iced tea pop can, I cut a slot, and then this is my little tool. Just a piece of sheet metal. I tried to use the thin part of a pop can, it wasn't strong enough, but this you can just slide into this section. You have to wiggle it, so you want to make sure you get under all the pieces of the coil. You just have to wiggle it back and forth to get it in there, and then you have this nice large piece sticking out the back. You want it to be long enough to put a piece of tape. You take your thin strip of tape. This is really why I like using duct tape, because it's really easy to pull strips of tape off by hand. Might be a little too wide. Let's have a look. So you put it on the tab. You put it on the back of the tab. So you can use it to pull through so that you can tape the rest of the sections. And you really want to push it on, especially the beginning, because you don't want the beginning right here. You don't want that to peel backwards, because then it's going to get stuck. So it's going to be a very tight fit. And then you go over and you slowly inch this through. Now there's going to be a lot of resistance as you start taking the tape, and then very quickly it's going to pull out. So you have to make sure you don't pull the tape all the way through. You want tape on this side and you want tape on that side so that you can roll it over. What you want one piece of tape on both sides.
So basically I've made a circle of tape around this coil without taking it off the mount. So that's going to work really well. Now with these wires, I want to push everything down, so I'm pinning all these wires when I come through here. So the most important, this is the end of the coil, right here, it comes through. It's important that I pin the end of the coil, because that's what's going to want to unravel the most. Just take this tape, fold it over, press down so it's nice and tight, and then take the back piece and complete the loop. Push it through the hole. It's a little finicky, but it's going to help a lot when we take it apart. Alright, so I just put one piece on. You can also cut out sections in 4 corners, so you can tape it up really nice before you take it off. But I feel like this piece is the most important. This is the most important step when we take the front plate off and we try and get the coil off. So what you're going to need is you're going to need 4 or 5 or 6 pieces of tape. All the tape that you're going to put on this coil, you want to have it ready so that you can use your hands. You're going to have one hand or 2 hands trying to hold this together, and the other one, yeah, see, it'd be good if you had 3 hands. So yeah, it's very important you have the tape ready. So then first you have to crack these nuts off so that you can pull the bolts. The first bolt out already, and this one I just loosen. So I take this off. Now this is already the stage where it can start falling apart. So I slide this out, and then I right away want to start holding it together. So there's a coil. It looks really nice. It's not perfect, but I think it'll do the job. Now you want to try and strategize. I usually put tape across here, here, and here. So you want to angle it up, and then you want to start taping with your tape. So you kind of crack it out, push the center piece out, hold it with 2 hands, and then take your piece, tuck it around. So with the duct tape, you can only put so much tension on before you rip it, but basically you want to pull it as tight as you can without damaging the duct tape. You want to have nice tight coils. So you have that piece. Now the bottom. It's all the same procedure. You tuck the tape under, and then you make a strip with it. And the last one. See, this one wasn't wrapped that tightly. You can see there's some space in it. So you can crush the coil a little bit when you're applying the tape. Alright, that worked quite well. That was the most difficult part. So now you can take all the securing pieces off. And then this piece is still, you straighten it out, and then ta-da! There it is. So this is the coil. This is the one I made before. They're very similar. They have all these crazy wires on top. You want to keep them here. I made them a little too long. This one looks a lot better. So I have 1 long one and 2 short ones. Once you have this all wired up, you can just cut them. You can just take your wire cutters here, and you could just cut somewhere along here, and then you could wind them together. I think I'm going to do that. I don't want too much crazy wire. You just want them like this, so it comes off the coil, and then you can solder it. So once I solder this, this coil will be done. Just with the last piece of tape, I said this is the most important. This holds the end piece, which is the one that can unravel everything. So you want to take this tape and make sure that you put extra tape on the top here.